All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is, what is it? It's Tuesday, yeah, because yesterday was an Arlen Monday. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pretty good, I think, back and forth for over an hour with Arlen. Ultimate video just under that with some judicious editing after the fact. So if you haven't checked out that video, hope you will. And yeah, I'm going to keep talking about the election. I don't know what else, nothing else matters right now nearly as much. I don't really think there's any prospect for meaningful change absent voting out the bad people who have done so much harm, so much damage to our nation. And tragically, they infest, infect, and completely control both political parties, the duopoly, the unitary party, if you will. We're going to talk about how they betrayed working people and how working people get it, right? We're seeing that, and we're seeing an extraordinarily tone-deaf, disappointing, I don't know, however you want to call it, response from the Democrats. We used to expect better. I used to expect better from them, but now I don't. I really don't. But what we're going to do is what we've been doing here for nearly a year, and that is center the victims of American empire, American militarism first. And those are the people who live around the state of Israel. Almost unique, almost singularly in the past year, they've been Gazans, right? Israel has been making, you want to use the word war? They've been making war on the people of Gaza, killing well over 40,000 with our weapons. They've expanded that war. Now they're going north, and with just yet another obscene orgy of violence. They have been pounding Lebanon with this figure here, 492 killed. This is from this morning's Washington Post. The number actually has been updated to well over 500. I'll give you the latest number I've seen in a moment. But this story really reflects or really demonstrates, in my view, and we'll get to it, just the complete failure of the Biden-Harris policy vis-a-vis Israel, their insistence that regardless of what Israel does, we will support it. We will provide Israel with its weaponry, no matter how many people they kill, no matter how disproportionate their attacks may be, regardless of whether they are understood by the global community to be committing genocide. It doesn't matter to Biden-Harris. They're going to continue to support Israel. No questions asked, no meaningful questions asked. And we're seeing the direct fruits now beyond the borders of Gaza in northern, north of Israel in Lebanon. So I think, and what I've been saying over and over again is you can't vote for Harris. I didn't take that position initially. I think it's really important to understand that I wasn't a knee-jerk dogmatic opponent of Harris's run for president when she was anointed by the DNC to replace Biden. And I wasn't thrilled, right? I mean, I never liked her. I've said that before, but, and I thought there should have been some form of democratic choice involved where Democratic voters would have a say, some influence over the direction of the party post-Biden. But we didn't, right? I mean, I'm still a registered Democrat. We had no say, nothing. We weren't consulted. Nobody cared what we had to say. The Democratic establishment, led by President Obama and former Speaker Pelosi, made the decision that it was going to be Harris. That was the end of it. They made that decision, I'm sure, in consultation with billionaire donors. I'm sure in consultation with powerful Congress members But ultimately, the decision was not in our hands. It was not in your hands. It was not in the people's hands. It was in the hands of a tiny number of people led by the two most powerful Democrats still, obviously, evidently, although neither one enjoys the office that they held for years, Pelosi and, of course, President Obama. So that infuriated me, of course. I was very upset. But, I recognize the reality that the Democrat Party is democratic. And if we had a candidate in the duopoly who was actually definitively opposed to Israeli genocide, I was prepared to hold my nose on every other issue with which I disagree with Harris, including her staunch support for the ecocide. But she hasn't, right? She's made it clear. I believe her when she says there will be no conditions on Israel. There will be no limits on Israel. And these are the fruits of that policy, of that Harris-Biden policy. The fruits are a completely unrestrained, a completely out of control Israel. And you can say, oh, it's Bibi, it's this, well, whatever it is, it's an out of control, bloodthirsty Israel that cannot and will not be stopped by anyone or any nation. The U.S. could stop it, right? I mean, Israel's using our bombs. So Monday evening, the death count included 35 children, 58 women, medics, right? People who were trying to provide care, helping the victims. And that number was updated. The latest I've seen was 564 dead. That's in the Washington Post later this morning, actually, just before I went on air, and at least 50 children. So that's just the past 24 hours in Lebanon. And it all is a response, by the way, to Hezbollah saying, hey, you don't get to just plant explosive plastic devices in our pagers and kill us without us doing something in response. And Israel, rather than acknowledging, hey, we did something wrong, we violated international law, let's talk about it so there's no more death, no more killing, Israel retaliates by increasing the death toll tenfold. Or, well, I don't know, maybe that's not right. Maybe it's only twofold, right? Because there were over 200 dead as a result of the pager attack. So now it's 800 dead. However you want to. The numbers are staggering. They're horrific. That's the country we support. That's the country Harris-Biden support. And that's why they do it. Because they know they can count on it. Netanyahu and his cabinet can count on U.S. support. And if you say, well, it's really not fair, and you shouldn't blame Harris-Biden, it's not their fault, it's Bibi, he's a bad kid, and you can't blame the parents for the bad child. Right, I don't always blame parents for a bad child. I do blame parents who give that bad child guns and knives and bombs. Yeah, then I blame the parents. The Harris-Biden administration could have probably gotten rid of Netanyahu if they simply refused to support Israel whatsoever. If they said, hey, as long as you've got this rogue, this fugitive from justice who is staying in power to avoid prosecution, we're not going to give you a friggin' penny. And you know what? I could be wrong, but maybe the Knesset would have said, oh, you know what? We're not going to build that. We're not going to stay in coalition with you anymore, right? Because he's only in power. His party, the conservatives, Likud, whatever you want to call them, they don't have a, I don't think is he the Likud? I might get that wrong. I'm going to look that up. I think he is Likud, but I could be wrong. So if you hear me typing, I hope you don't. Yeah, he's Likud. Okay, so there's even more extreme than that. They don't have a majority. His party doesn't have a majority. He has to coalesce with, more conservative groups. If the U.S. said, we're done, no more, you got to get rid of that guy or we're not going to help you out. Right? The whole defense, one of the defenses for eradicating Gaza altogether is, well, they are represented by Hamas. And look at that Hamas charter. Hamas charter says no more Israel. It says from the river to the sea. So obviously saying no more Israel is exactly the same as saying we're going to kill every single Jew. We're going to put them all in ovens like the Nazis, right? That's what I heard Bill Maher say. That kind of craziness. But that's our defense. One of the defenses that we have for continuing to support Israel at all costs. Well, Gaza has these horrible Hamas people in charge. They're so bad that we have no choice but to just keep murdering children and women, tying the hands behind the back of prisoners, shooting them, putting them in pits, raping women. Israel has no choice. That's all. It can't help it. It's the human shields. That's the defense, right? Well, what's the defense then for Israel continuing to elect Bibi? Maybe we should use that argument and say, well, you know what? We can't really help you because you keep empowering this genocidal maniac, this amoral monster. But no one said that. Harris, Biden haven't said that. They haven't said a word about that. Instead, they said, well, we got to keep arming. We got to keep them bombed. Well, we did pause for a week. We had a pause that refreshes for a week. Guess what? That policy has been a complete bust. It's failed utterly, and you can see the fruits of it now as Israel's expanded to a second front, a full-blown hot war on a second front north of the country. It can only do that because it has the full support of Harris Biden. That's the only reason Israel can engage in this, in more massacres. Okay, so I'm sort of annoyed. I thought I had put this in there, but I guess I put it in the wrong place. There were another 12. The death count in Gaza daily is not as high as it was. I've remarked on this. Well, Israel is focusing its killing on Lebanese now, on Hezbollah, and also on the West Bank. So, as the Washington Post pointed out, there's only 12 more reported dead by the health ministry in Gaza. Just 12. Maybe I guess is that the good news? Is that like the silver lining in the cloud of Israeli bombing, bombardment, killing, murders, children, women, medics? I guess the silver lining is Gaza gets a tiny little reprieve for now. Only 12 more murdered yesterday, 12 more killed in Gaza. By the way, join me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Now, I promoted today's program as focusing on working class Americans and just why they will not vote for Harris. Now, I want to be really clear. That doesn't mean they're all going to vote for Trump. Many will not. Many will do exactly what I'm doing, which is vote for neither. Recognize that neither one is acting in their best interest. Recognizing that both are harmful to America and to our world. Many will vote for Trump, obviously. Many will vote for Harris. I'm hoping that many will actually turn out for Jill Stein. She's our only hope. You know, I thought it was interesting. One of the comments I get a lot from people is, well, you're privileged, Hal, which I fully accept, acknowledge. Of course I'm privileged. I mean, I get to do this. Who else gets to do this? Talk for a living. I'm privileged. But if you weren't doing so well or you were a person of color, then maybe you wouldn't feel it was so easy to go condemn Kamala Harris. Well, I would say to you back, well, maybe if you, who criticized me, had to work 3 jobs because Democratic Party had embraced full-bore neoliberalism and, for quote, free, unquote, trade, maybe you wouldn't find it so easy either to vote for the candidate that you prefer, Harris. If you want to make the case for Harris, that's fine. But make that case without recourse to personal, ad hominem attacks. Well, you're special. If you want to say, well, Hal, you're really privileged. You have, 401k and you have a retirement and you have this and you have that. And those factors cause you to vote to support Jill Stein because she's going to be better for you personally. That's a really strong argument. If you want to say, well, billionaires support Trump because his tax policy will be better for them, that's a really good argument. That's not an ad hominem argument. That's not you're not thinking, well, you don't understand what it's like for poor people. No, that's an argument that says you have a personal stake in electing that person president. I get that argument. I would even acknowledge I do have a personal stake in electing Jill Stein. I want our planet to, stop burning itself up. I want to stop crushing Palestinian people. That's personal to me. Now, it's not like it's personal like I'll have more money in the bank after, although I think I probably would if we had mandatory single-payer universal health care. It probably would be to my benefit. But that's to everyone's benefit. So those kind of personal asides, it's just BS. I heard this Holocaust survivor talking about how because when he has stepped forward defending Palestinians, criticizing Israel for its genocidal activities, for occupying the West Bank, for stealing land, for pointing out, when this man has pointed out, this Holocaust survivor has pointed out that Israel is acting a lot like the Nazis did, and he saw both. He lived through when he was a little boy, but still can remember what life was like in Nazi Germany in the late 30s and early 40s. I think he was able to escape somehow or survive somehow in underground. And he said, hey, a lot of things that I saw in Germany when the Nazis were in power, I see the Israeli government doing exactly the same thing to Palestinians, humiliating them, embarrassing them, dehumanizing them. And he said, and when I point this out, I get called a self-hating Jew and a traitor to my people. And he said, hey, look, I'm in my 80s now, late 80s. That stuff, I don't care about that stuff. It doesn't go over with me. But you know what? It's hurtful. It's good. He's bold. He can take it. But for some people, it's very painful to be attacked, especially by your own people, if you want to call them that, your own people. So there it is. Full support of the Biden-Harris administration. Israel's killed. Well, we have a number. I say that says over. I think that actual official count, according to the Washington Post, and I think that's not just they're just, by the way, the Post was one of, covered this. Usually they don't have the death count every day, but they did today. But I don't have that clipping for you. But what the Post the number they published was that 4,104.67. That's the number they published. And that is exactly the same number. I think that's direct from the Hamas ministry. So anyone Ministry of Health, any other source would give you that same number. And that includes 12 more victims. Yeah. So that's our world. And if you're good with it, then hey, vote for Trump, vote for Harris. If you like where we are right now as a country, I don't see that you got a problem. But if you don't like it, then I think we got to go in a different direction. And just to kind of prove that point, that if we vote for Harris, certainly, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the killing of Palestinians, when it comes to violent rampages, nothing will change. And again, this is the reason it's happening. It's not just that we're not stopping Israel. We're aiding and abetting its war crimes. And because of that, it's expanded its operations, its killing fields.
Done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No,
look at how she shakes her head. She can't even, no, of course not. Why would I change policy? So this was was it like the end of August, I believe? Just at the end when she did her interview with Dana Bash, I believe. So you could say, well, how that's old. Come on, that's old news. Probably gotten a change of heart. Plus, it's on CNN. She's on CNN. CNN is like a pro-Israel Zionist news outlet, right? So, you can't expect her to be, to take a position that's going to upset her questioner, Dana Bash. So it's not really, you're not being fair, Hal. You're not being fair to Kamala. Give her a chance. Let me see if there's more to this clip. There may not be.
Deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at...
All right, so there it is. We have to get a deal done. And, I guess that sounds kind of persuasive. We have to get a deal done. And again, this was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So time change. Her position could be fluid. Maybe she's had a change of heart. It's really unfair for me to criticize her for something she said in August. It's almost October now. Well, let's go back 1 week. This is 1 week ago. National Association of Black Journalists. Is there a change of heart? This is before Black journalists, right? These are going to be people who are going to not be so skeptical, right? Because Dana Bash is an unabashed, pardon the pun there, unabashed. She's an unabashed Zionist. She's gone after the protesters at colleges and universities, calling them anti-Semitic. We'll talk about it. We got a story about that too, which is very heartbreaking for me. We'll get to that. But again, it's a little bit, perhaps it's a mite unfair for me to hold Harris accountable for a position she took on CNN nearly a whole month ago. So let's hear what she has to say to the National Association of Black Journalists.
Where do you see the line between aggression and defense, and our power as Israel's ally to do something?
Okay, a lot to unpack in what you just said.
All right, so there's not a lot to unpack, right? It's really not that complicated at all. And I didn't give you the whole question because there was a long question. It was a good question, and it was appropriately long because she was really trying to nail Harris down and narrow her scope. Say, we want to know what you're going to do specifically to stop the killing of Israel's killing. And, will you use the power that you have, the most powerful person in the world, if you're elected president, to stop arming Israel, to stop providing Israel with the weapons of killing? And she even went on to say, hey, and, you say it's aggression. You say Israel gets to engage in self-defense. You heard her at the end. But in fact, where do you draw the line between defense and aggression? So for Harris, there's a lot to unpack. This is complicated. Will she answer the question? Well, let's find out.
So let's start with this. I absolutely believe that this war has to end, and it has to end as soon as possible. And the way that will be achieved is by getting a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
All right, so that's not going to happen. There is no... Well, look, here's what the Washington Post says. U.S. officials concede Gaza ceasefire out of reach for Biden. Biden will be in office at least until, January, right? For sure. He'll be in office until January. So there's no ceasefire, Kamala. She said that. Sounded good. We need a ceasefire and hostage deal. Not going to happen at least until next year. Now, she spoke to the journalists there on the 17th. This article was updated on the 19th. But you don't think You don't think she knew this when she was doing that interview? Obviously, it's not like this officials up until September 19th, when, at 5:25 p.m., this article it was updated 6:20. It's not like they were saying, oh yeah, we're close. They knew, she had to know. She has been told repeatedly, we're not going to get a ceasefire. She's been banging that drum for at least since the DNC, long before. We've been working tirelessly. And you got nowhere. What she's been doing has completely failed. It's done absolutely everything harmful for the people of that region. It's empowered Israel. It's provided Israel with the means to kill indiscriminately, deliberately, children, women, and men, destroy homes, destroy lives, millions of lives at this point. That's the bitter legacy of the Harris-Biden policy. And it's now moved to potential all-out war in the Middle East. She has no answers to this extraordinarily serious crisis. She cannot handle it. She doesn't know how to handle it. She has no answers when she's asked about this, except we're going to keep doing what has failed completely. I don't know how anyone can say it's okay to vote for her under those circumstances. I don't care. I get how bad Trump is. Don't vote for Trump. You have another option. But to say, well, we got to give her a chance. She's had a gazillion chances to explain how bad her policies have failed, or she's had and that she'll go in a different direction. She could even fairly, somewhat, throw Biden under the bus. He wouldn't even know at this point what's going on. He's completely gaga. And you know what? If she did throw Biden under the bus, she said, well, President Biden had a long, close relationship with Israel. And I think towards the end, he let that color his thinking about what was the right thing to do. But we've got to have a ceasefire. We've got to get the hostage deal done. And the way we can do that is by turning the screws on Israel, by telling Israel you can no longer kill people. We are, bomb people, bomb buildings, civilians, hospitals, residences, universities. You can't expand the war into Lebanon. We can't start another war in Lebanon. You can't plant plastic explosives in pagers. We're cutting you off, right? We're cutting you off. She could say that. Anyone who says she can't say that, you're wrong. She could say that. And she should say that. And because she won't say that, because she won't say anything like that, she's not qualified to be president. She would be a terrible president. Right, let's just play a little more, because I thought this interview, some of what she had to say was very, very instructive. Now, if you're saying to me, well, you're not being fair, you're only picking on poor Kamala, what about Trump? Don't vote for Trump. Don't vote for Trump. He's really bad too. But this is about the party that's supposed to be better. This is the party that has in the past called itself the party of peace. This is the party that has called for reductions in the Pentagon budget, or at least had some prominent leaders who have. And now they're 100% all in, from Bernie to AOC to Steny to Clyburn. It doesn't matter. Obama, they're all in for her. They put party above you. They put party above lives. And they do it not because of some great love for the Democratic Party, trust me. They do it out of fear. And they do it out of greed, because if they stay loyal to the party, they know there's going to be an incredible parachute, golden parachute for them. I think Dick Gephardt gets $1 million a year lobbying for, more than that probably, lobbying for pharmaceuticals. Same with Howard Dean. All right, here's more from Harris.
And we are working around the clock to achieve that end. Stepping back, October 7, 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered, and actually, and some Americans, by the way.
All right, so she's concerned about the Americans, right? She mentions the Americans slaughtered. So, okay, yeah. I mean, that was almost a year ago. There's no Americans being slaughtered by Gaza right now. There are some, I guess, American hostages. And you know what? What you've done is you put their necks on the chopping block. Your policies, Harris, have put the lives of Americans on the chopping block. That's why you shouldn't be president. Let's play just a little more of this.
Concert. Women were horribly raped.
All right, so we know that's BS. We know she keeps playing that drum. It's not true. But, or at least it's not. It's very, very much unproven. But if you want to talk about Americans being killed, she mentioned that. It's important. The last American I understand who was killed, maybe there was a hostage, but the last American I understand who was free was killed by Israel, was killed by a sniper who put a bullet in her head from a few hundred yards away. I haven't heard, did Kamala call the family? Because I don't think she did. Did she say, hey, we've got to do something about this? Israel can't just keep doing this? Because I don't think she did. I don't think she's had a word one to say about Eisener Ezgi Igi. I hope I said her name right. I know I have trouble with that, and I apologize. So there's the woman that the Israeli military killed just a few weeks ago. Not one word from Harris. No condolences, nothing. I guess I'm not giving her enough of a chance, right? Disagree, 240-242-5646. I know, we're going to talk about working class. I'll get there, I absolutely promise you. Just a couple more things on the war, on militarism rampant, and how awful it is. So I was at this World Beyond War count. Why do I talk about this? So I was at this event, and I don't have the video of it. I should have taken it myself. Apparently, there's going to be video posted. I hope they show me asking a question. But my question was to the panel was, how do we build a coalition, a political coalition to stop this, to stop the wars? Because it's the U.S. government that's the most responsible, not solely, but we're the most responsible for the perpetual war that we see our world right now. And we could do the most to stop it also, not just within our own borders, but also to tamp down tensions with China, Russia, and other countries that are bellicose. We could do that. We don't. We amp up tensions. We make things worse. Certainly Israel is a perfect example of that. So he said, hey, how do we build a political revolution? Because that's the only way I see to stop it. And the response was so disappointing. The response was, and I'm going to hopefully get this video for you maybe next week. The response was, well, it would be nice, voting is one thing. It would be good to do. We're a 501c3, so we can't really endorse any candidates. Well, you don't have to endorse anyone. You just say that the two parties are awful and we have to go in a different direction. But that didn't come. No, we're not going to say it. We're not going to tell you not to vote for Kamala. We're not going to say that. And the continuance was, well, we are not just concerned about what you do in the voting booth. We're concerned about what you do the rest of the year and in the years between elections, which I guess means protests, writing letters, signing petitions online. Here's a flash for you. None of that does any good. I hate to say that. I really do. And I believe in direct. I think strikes can make a difference. If a corporation is facing long-term profit loss due to a strike, they might do something. So I don't think it's true that no non-election type action can make a difference. But when it comes to this kind of war situation, pretty much that's it. That's it. This government, the U.S. government, is completely enthralled to the Pentagon, and worse than the Pentagon, much worse, the weapons manufacturers. AIPAC, completely dominated by them. The only way we're going to change that is by changing the government completely, by moving away from the unitary party. And that's what I wanted to hear, and I didn't hear it. And I was very, very disappointed. Let me give you an example of how little power we have. I was accused by the old ball coach in Monterey of being way too braggy about my alma mater, Wesleyan University. And I have to admit, I kind of was, and I thought, oh, you're overstating it, coach. I don't talk about Wesleyan that much. And we went back and I looked at a clip, or I played some of it for him, and I must have said the word Wesleyan about 8 times, right, in about 30 seconds. So I was like, okay, you're right, mea culpa. I don't feel so proud of my school anymore. I don't feel proud of it at all. In fact, last spring, during the protests, I did sort of feel, hey, Wesleyan handled it pretty well. There were protesters out there demanding divestment from Israel, which I support 100%. I don't want any money from Wesleyan going to any company that invests in Israel. I don't want that. I want them to make a strong stance against investing in Israel. And they, rather than arresting the protesters or, knocking heads, bringing in Zionist thugs like UCLA did, like the state of California did in LA, Wesleyan sat down, talked to them, had some, teach-ins, conversations between different student groups, which I agree. And they negotiated a deal whereby the protesters would leave their occupation. They'd leave off camping out in front of North College, and there's a picture of that. North College is where the administration building is. And in return, they would engage in a good faith conversation and in good faith discussion whether to divest. Well, the decision came down over the weekend, and the Wesleyan Investment Committee rejected the proposal for divestment. And, it hit me like a gut punch, okay? I went to it felt very progressive when I was there. Although, admittedly, many of those so-called progressives now are, making their 7-figure, 8-figure salaries. A lot went to Hollywood. A guy who's a big shot at Goldman Sachs, I think it's Goldman Sachs, huge donor. One of my roommates, went into venture capital. So, it's kind of disappointing to me that the political activism only went so far, but it felt real in the moment. And it felt real when President Ross said, yeah, we're going to take seriously the divestment proposal. And I can't say they didn't. I mean, they rejected it, but it made me realize that was probably the wrong strategy, even though I agreed with it in the time, because you don't negotiate evil. What Israel's doing is evil. It's wrong. It's immoral. And Wesleyan shouldn't be investing in companies that do business there. Now, you might, I guess, around the edges, you got to figure stuff out. And if it's some enormous, multi-billion-dollar company, I don't know how you deal with it. But you don't just reject the proposal. You say, okay, we're going to look into this. We're going to try to figure out how we can accede to this. And I'm not trying to make it that sound like that would be an easy decision, right? Because presumably they have stock in Google, they have stock in other giant corporations. And it wasn't like you couldn't do business, right? Like I assume McDonald's, right? I don't know if you'd have to take your money out. I don't know exactly what the proposal was, because it wasn't that only businesses that reject doing any taking any money out of or putting any money into Israel were were to be divested. It was only if they helped the Israeli military, if they're part of the Israeli war machine, then divestment would be called for under those circumstances. And I get it. I'm sure Google would be one of those. I don't know. Maybe they don't have a contract with the Israeli government. My suspicion is they do. So I'm not saying this would have been easy, but rather than rejecting that proposal, they could have said, okay, we're going to move in that direction. We're going to slow. Maybe we can't do it overnight. If we sell our Google stock, we sell whatever other companies, we're going to have enormous profits. They're going to be tax. I know they probably don't have to pay tax, right? Because they're a nonprofit. I don't know how all that works. But yeah, okay. Maybe it's not so easy to do that, but you could still throw them at least a bone. Instead, they're locking them up. So this is from today's Wesleyan Argus. Very disappointing indeed. From my alma mater, really hurts me. Really, really upsets me. See this, and again, this is the school I attended, and they just don't care. They just don't give a crap. All right. So let's get to the working people. That's what this program is supposed to be about. This story is getting a lot of attention. Who should the Teamsters endorse? Right? So we talk about working people. So obviously people who drive trucks are workers. They're not professional. Well, I mean, it's hard. I'm not saying it's not a really tough job. It's not challenging. You have to know your stuff. I mean, I'm sure as hell, you put me behind an 18 wheeler and I'll drive it into a wall within a few hours, I'm sure. The Teamsters went to a lot of trouble to determine whom they should endorse. It wasn't an easy, willy-nilly, let's just endorse, candidate A and move on, be done with it. So they first had these presidential town hall straw polls, and you can see Biden prevailed. He got a plurality, not a majority, and that was through July. But of course, Biden was off the ticket by then. At the end of those town hall straw polls, he was basically a dead man walking. It was after his debate with Trump. It was only a matter of time. So they didn't endorse Biden at that point. Instead, they went back to the drawing room and they conducted polls of the entire membership. The first poll, which Biden won a plurality, but not a majority of. I don't know what the rules are, how many of their members have to agree. And I think probably the executive board of the Teamsters has the real decision-making power. But they engaged in a democratic process. They asked people at their meetings, and they asked people electronically. And the result of the electronic poll, this time with Harris, was a very significant win by Trump. Most members who voted said, we want Trump. It wasn't close. They wanted Trump. And they didn't, and the Teamsters weren't satisfied with just that electronic member poll. They actually commissioned a phone poll, a research poll. And this was done after both conventions, right? And the results were very, very similar to the electronic vote. This is a research call. They call people. They said, hey, you're a Teamster. We're doing this for the Teamsters. Who do you support? And again, Trump wins very handily, nearly 60%. So if you just look at the rank and file, Teamsters, truck drivers, they include others, right? It's not just truck drivers, but that's the largest, I believe, single position, right? The job that's represented are truck drivers. They wanted Trump. The rank and file wanted Trump. But the Teamsters decided not to endorse anyone. Their ultimate call was, we're not going to endorse either candidate. Now, if I was one of those truckers who supported Trump, I might be kind of pissed off. I might be like, wait a second. Look at those numbers. Yeah, the town hall said one thing, but a lot of us don't go to town halls. We're too busy. We're on the road. We can't always make it. And this was something the due distance bros were talking about. The people who go to those town halls are the most politically active. This union, like all of the unions, have longstanding ties to the Democratic Party. So, you should deprecate the town hall vote. Now, I don't know that I agree with that. And I'm not criticizing the decision not to endorse anyone. I'm simply saying that if I were a truck driver who supported Trump, I would be pretty irritated that the Teamsters didn't reject Harris and endorse Trump. But I get that they did. Here's AOC's. And by the way, before I'll show, there's AOC's tweet. But the question I have is, what do you do with this information if you're a Democrat, if you're a progressive? What I would do is some soul searching. I would say, well, wait, what's going on here? Why don't truck drivers support us? We've been on their side much more than the Republicans ever have. We're not the party of the billionaire class. Why? What are we doing wrong? Maybe we're not as good as we think we are. Maybe we're not really responding to working people. That's what I would ask if I were a Democrat. And if I were a very progressive Democrat like an AOC who got into office in 2018 condemning Democratic leadership, saying the Democrats aren't listening to working people, they're not there for working people, I don't have health care. That was one of her big things was, right? I'm a bartender, I work so hard, I don't even have health care. What happens to me? I don't know how I'll retire, I'll never get to retire. This was what she was saying, why she was running to replace the Democratic leadership, because she argued then they don't care about working people. So what the truck drivers are saying by their non-endorsement actually jibes perfectly with AOC's theory for her election, right? Her argument, I'm here for working people and the Democratic establishment isn't. So does she say that? Does she say, maybe we need to be a little more responsive to the workers? Maybe that opulent display, that showy gaudiness that was all on display for the whole country to see in, where did they have in Chicago? Maybe that wasn't the right way to go. But instead, no, I'm going to attack the union. I'm going to attack the leader. Sean O'Brien has been boosting Republicans all year while supporting anti-worker, anti-choice Senate candidates. I have no idea who she's talking about there. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote to save Teamster pensions nationwide. Listen to your local. They know the score. Thank you, Cal Teamsters. Okay, so the Cal Teamsters did endorse Harris. That is true. And I don't know what the vote was. I don't know whether the rank and file there had a different result, although it's hard to believe that in the most populous state in the country, Harris won convincingly when she lost by 2058? Let me go back and look at that for a sec. She lost by 27 points nationwide in that research phone poll. It's hard to believe that she could lose this badly in that phone poll but still win California. But I don't know. Maybe she did. I don't know. But for AOC to be so dismissive, the arrogance that she knows better. Because that's what she's saying. Oh, they don't know what's best for you. I know better. Kamala voted to save your pension, which is important. And because of that, because it's important, I look at that and say, well, maybe they should have endorsed Harris since, she cast a deciding vote because it was 50-50 in the Senate and she was the tie-breaking vote. But let's go to Sean O'Brien and hear him explain. And we'll see whether you think he's, out of line or if maybe AOC is.
dollar bailout to rescue union pension plans, Teamsters pension plans from insolvency, and wonder, what more of a commitment do you need?
Well, right, so he just asked the question, says, hey, look, just like what AOC said, she just saved your pensions. What more do you need from Democrats to vote for them? So let's see, is he going to give you a word salad? Is he going to, hem and haw and look nervous and, question? I don't know. No, let's see if because you can tell if this guy knows his onions. See if you think he's persuasive. That's a hard question, right? Hey, they voted to save your pensions. Why aren't you endorsing them? Let's hear what he has to say.
President Biden and his administration did fix 300 pension funds.
All right, so the first thing he does, I want to show you, this is the kind of person who I would feel much more comfortable if they were running for president. He says, yeah, it's a good point. He acknowledges it immediately, no question about it. Not, well, let's find out how we got here and this and that, which he'll get to, by the way, because the context in this case is really, really important. But it's true. You're right. And it's important. And it's a point in the Democrats' favor, is what he's saying.
And on the verge of insolvency. But there's a backstory to all this. In 1980, in the Teamsters Union, we had 400,000 Teamster truck drivers in the freight division. Democratic legislation led by Senator Ted Kennedy and signed off by Joe Biden in 1980 passed trucking deregulation. And we lost 400,000 jobs. Companies.
Right, so Democratic policy 44 years ago, when there was a Democratic president, cost the Teamsters 400,000 jobs. And Joe Biden supported that. Right now, I understand Kamala Harris didn't, but it's a Democratic Party. That's what they've been doing to working people for 44 years. And now they expect blind loyalty? But he's saying, yeah, but you know what? They caused this problem, but let's hear some more of this.
Bankrupt. And that caused a huge strain on pension funds that just each year it kept getting worse and worse. And yes, they fixed the problem, but that problem was created by the people that fixed the problem, and they don't want to recognize that. And I appreciate it.
All right, so that's a really important point I want to make. When he said they created the problem that they helped fix, or they fixed to a degree, they didn't get those 400K jobs back, though. They're gone. They're gone like the buffalo. But yeah, all right, we got the money, but they won't even admit it. They won't acknowledge their role, their complicity. That's huge. If you don't accept responsibility for the harm you've caused, no one's going to trust you not to cause more harm in the future. Just a little more from this clip, and then we'll get to another clip, which is also important.
Members appreciate the pension being fixed, but I always tell people, I broke my mother's window playing street hockey in 1980.
All right, and he's going on to say, yeah, I broke her window and, I fixed it, and I don't get a lot of credit for fixing a window that I broke. So Sean O'Brien, very persuasive, making a strong case, explaining precisely why, despite the vote that Harris did cast as veep to save the pension funds, it doesn't go as far as you might think. It's good, but it could have been better if they had taken responsibility, taken ownership. But he doesn't stop there. So let's hear a little more from Sean O'Brien. It's precisely why. And again, is this some sort of wild-eyed, crazy, Kool-Aid drinking, working class buffoon, boob, as the Democrats would like to paint him? Or does he just seem like a smart, knowledgeable, responsible representative? Now, I don't know. There might be all sorts of bad stuff going on in the Teamsters. I'm just saying he's explaining the non-endorsement, I think, powerfully, and putting the onus right back where it belongs, on the party that didn't get it and that expected it. And saying, hey, rather than pointing fingers at us, maybe look at your own soul. Look at, if you have one, and say, well, maybe this is why working people are so disgusted with you.
The reasons that the International couldn't endorse President Trump either, amongst other reasons. We didn't get a commitment on vetoing national right to work and conversely.
Right, so I'll stop it right there. So he talked about Trump. He just says, hey, Trump would not promise that if a Republican Congress passed a right-to-work law, which is terrible for unions, he'd veto it. We're not going to endorse somebody who's not going to veto right to work.
Kamala Harris, we didn't get a commitment on protecting our members' right to strike under the Railway Labor Act. So there were a lot of mitigating factors.
And that's super important because remember, the Democrats, including AOC, and with the support at the behest of the Harris-Biden administration, told railway workers you don't get to strike. So, I mean, to me, these are really good reasons. And they explain why working people are so fed up with and so disgusted with the Democratic Party and won't support the Democratic Party. And final point here, again, the great majority of Teamsters voted accepted the town halls, but where they research poll and presumably their sentiment was reflected accurately, online voting and research poll, they supported Trump. So my question to the AOCs and the Democratic leadership is, why? What are you doing that's so bad? How are you hurting working people to the extent that they rejected you? Well, they're not going to answer it. But you could say to yourself, maybe this isn't the right party for me after all. Maybe, just maybe, she isn't less awful. The Teamsters think she's just as awful. So if you're AOC, this is an opportunity for you to beat up on workers, right? Don't listen to them. Don't listen to your union, even though you actually, you should have endorsed Kamala, even though 60% of you prefer Trump. That's her argument. I don't find that persuasive. If you're Our Revolution, if you're an ostensibly progressive group, this is an opportunity to fundraise, right? Well, Teamsters don't like Harris, so give us money to help elect Harris. That's the argument, right? The Teamsters, I was kind of surprised. They put the poll results right there. On their fundraising letter, look, the Teamsters voted against Harris. They voted for Trump. So therefore, give us money to elect Harris and defeat Trump. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Like when you think a progressive group would say, well, wait a second. If the working class people in a union, and Our Revolution, we love unions. They've got a big sign, we love unions. Wouldn't you think they might say, the union doesn't love Harris. The union doesn't love the Democrats. We love the union, so maybe we're going to listen to the union. Maybe we're not going to be so condescending and arrogant like AOC is to tell the union they don't know what they're doing. They don't know best. Well, if that's what you thought, if you thought Our Revolution might actually be somewhat responsive to the concerns of union people, you got another think, because the response from Our Revolution is we must speak directly to voters and remind them why Trump is terrible for the working class. Because I guess the voters can't be trusted to figure that out themselves. If it were true, we can't. The voters don't know what's best for them. The Teamsters don't know what's best for them. The working class that actually seems to prefer, at least in the Teamsters survey, that seems to prefer by a very significant margin, that working class. They don't know how terrible for them he is versus Kamala. So it's, you read that crap and it's, I don't know, it's like, that's a punch in my gut too, because I worked for Our Revolution, not nearly as much of a punch as it was that Wesleyan, I think, betrayed Palestinian people, betrayed its progressive mandate, but it's still a gut punch. Still a gut punch. All right, so those union people, there they are, one of their meetings. There's that elitist, white, privileged group of people. And they said, hey, We're not endorsing Kamala, period. But we know better than they do what's best for them. We have our college degrees and our law degrees and our PhDs. And we know what's best for them. Yeah, I'm sure they love that. I'm sure they really, really, really appreciate that sentiment. All right, it is after 1. I've gone for a full hour. I definitely got in the working class. But I'm going to do what I try to do is keep my show to an hour. And this next topic we'll get to tomorrow. And this is completely consistent. Why is this doing this to me? What is going on here? Let's see if we can get this. There we go. So this is the story I'm going to really take a long, hard look at tomorrow. I promise. I will have to, center the Middle East. But Evan Barker, so powerful in Newsweek, former Democratic campaign operative, campaign finance reform advocate, podcaster. I raised millions for Democrats. I realized they're the party of the rich. So she was at the DNC and she was horrified by what she saw. She was disgusted. She left the party. And so I'll share with you tomorrow why she came to that conclusion. That the party is not for her, that the party is not for working people. Enjoy your day. I'll be back tomorrow. And don't forget, since haven't quite got to my little closing music here, my little Furlese from the great Ludwig van. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe if you haven't yet. And join us on Facebook. Did I tell you that? Our group, the link is right there in the show description. It's a great place to engage in political dialogue. And all opinions are welcome as long as you don't attack personally members of the group or people who aren't, important political, aren't bold-faced names. There's a lot more leeway given to go after politicians, but not individuals who are members of Halitics.